Ladies and gentlemen, during the coronavirus pandemic, one of the orders that many states have is landlords cannot evict or remove any tenants during the time of a pandemic. And despite that, there are some that still make the attempt. This is where I think things are really screwed up. They're going to give salaries to pastors in this country, pay their salaries and their utility bills. To me, it would have been a better idea to give landlords assistance through the government. That way, people didn't have to be removed from their homes or have to worry about being evicted because the government would pick up the slack. To me, that would have made more sense. Giving money to pastors that don't even help people in their congregations and people in the community. Now, that's pretty jacked up. You know, in this thing, I can see everybody getting a raw deal. The landlords are getting a raw deal because they need to pay mortgages, they need to pay insurance and keep their properties up. And the tenants are getting a raw deal because let's face it, the ones that can get unemployment, that unemployment don't cover squat. That's one thing this country never believed in, giving people a living wage. That's something they never believed in. And you can see that from their beginnings, labor for free. And now, they love the Mexicans because they'll work for pennies on the dollar. This place always wants something for nothing, or trying to skirt by on paying pennies to people. And it just doesn't work. Now you got this pandemic going on. I was looking at what some people were saying they were getting on unemployment, and it was painful looking at it, because I know what they're getting ain't going to cover any rent. It's going to barely cover groceries in many cases. It is outrageous how stingy this country is. And then you have neighbors like Canada, and there's other countries that are giving their people $2,000 a month. With that, many people could have paid their rent. They could have kept the lights on. They could get food and keep the economy going with something like that. But no, we get a one-time payment of $1,200. What is that supposed to do when you've been out of work for over a month and you getting this little sorry ass unemployment? What is that supposed to do? Oh, if these people just get one thing right, I would be shocked. So, I understand. I got people in my family that are landlords, and I got people in my family, some of them are paying rent. So believe me, I know what many of you are going through, and it's going to be tough. Even think about this, even if people go back to work, these people that pay rent, they're going to have to go through a couple of pay cycles from their jobs in order to get a rent that they can give to a landlord at this point. Or you have many of these landlords, if they don't keep up with their mortgage, they may lose their property, and they're going to have to end up putting people out anyway. I mean, this is just a horrible situation that people are in. And the fact that this government want to help pastors and not the everyday person out here is just, this is sick. So, ladies and gentlemen, this came out in The Guardian, April 9th, 2020. Minnesota landlord charged over eviction attempt during pandemic, which is absolutely forbidden. In fact, he can technically get arrested for doing that. Authorities in Minnesota have pressed charges against a landlord who evicted a tenant during the coronavirus crisis and thus violated a state order forbidding kicking people out of their homes as the pandemic spreads across the U.S. The move is one of the strongest actions yet taken to guard vulnerable people against the threat of eviction, as unemployment in the U.S. soars to levels not seen since the Great Recession in wake of the economic crisis caused by the virus, as widespread shutdowns cover the US, and 17 million people on unemployment. That is just unimaginable. Numerous cities and states have deployed eviction moratoriums. Among them is Minnesota, one of the 15 states and territories to suspend both the enforcement of evictions and filing them in court, according to a tracker on a new eviction policies being maintained by a professor at Columbia University. So you can't even go to the courts and try to file to get people evicted at this time. They won't even accept that. Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison worked with Governor Tim Walz to craft the state's executive order suspending evictions. Landlords have so far been supportive, including the state's biggest landlord advocacy group, the Minnesota Multi-Housing Association. But last week, in a cause that was one of the first of its kind across the country, Ellison's office pressed charges against a small landlord, Howard Mosted of rural Pine County, for violating the executive order against evictions. According to the complaint filed in court, Mosted had advised his tenants, a family of 3 with a 4-year-old daughter, that their lease was ending on April 1st. But as the date approached, they had trouble finding a new place because of the coronavirus pandemic. And see, that's another thing. It's very difficult for people to just move from place to place now. Even that's going to get harder in the country. And the state stay-at-home order, Mosted then allegedly showed up at their door on April 2nd and asked to be let in so he could show the property to a potential buyer. The family refused, saying they feared letting new people into their home as their daughter has a pre-existing medical condition, making her more vulnerable to the virus. Okay, so he was just being nasty at that point. Mosted responded by forcing his way in and then removing circuit breakers in the boiler room, which he can't do that. That's illegal. Leaving the family without electricity, heat, or hot water, the complaint says. Ellison said that while he understood many landlords were in a difficult situation, he thought Mosted's actions were particularly heartless, which they were, and he hoped the state would send a message by pressing charges. He said, yeah, they're going to make an example out of him. They are going to make an example out of this man now. He should not have done that. He didn't think this thing through at all. He said that forcing people into homeless shelters would increase the risk for public health. We want to ensure small business people, including landlords, to seek help when they need it, but understand that by putting people out into the streets, what they're doing is not only hurting a family, but they are actually exposing all of us to the potential transmission, Ellison told The Guardian. When reached by The Guardian, Mosted, 77, said, wow, this is a 77-year-old man, and he don't have any common sense at all. Wow. Said the family was not behind on rent, but he had been planning to sell his farm, including the home where they live, as business had been tough for several years. Wait a minute. He did this to people that weren't even behind on rent? Oh my goodness. Oh, that is so nasty. They weren't even behind on their rent, and he did this to them. Oh, this man is dirty. He wanted to sell the farm, so he was trying to force them out of there, but they weren't behind on their rent. Technically, he really went over and beyond breaking the law. Yeah, they're going to make an example out of this man. Okay, so he was trying to sell the farm that this family lived on, including the home. The business had been tough for several years. That's what he's saying, that he's had a tough time financially for several years, but that doesn't give you the right to do what he did. In an interview, he lashed out against undocumented immigrants, refugees, Black Lives Matter. Oh, he's one of them. Okay. Woo, they gonna throw the book at you, man. What he sees as government outreach in response to the coronavirus outbreak. Now, this dude is going to get what he deserves. Oh, nasty little effer. Okay, so what's happening with the coronavirus shutdown is a communist takeover. He said he's only making things worse by running his mouth. He would have been better off saying no comment to the newspaper when they called him, The Guardian. You went out there and look. So now the courts are going to see that you hate immigrants, you hate refugees, you hate Black people, you hate, this is what they're going to see now because you ran your mouth. Oh, this man is dirty. So now Mostad now face up to $25,000 in fine. So now you got yourself in even deeper financial trouble than what you were already in. For what? Wow. Ellison said while his office would continue to enforce the eviction moratorium, he worries about what will happen when the order is lifted, and called for action at the federal level. Yeah, because if you don't do that, as soon as the eviction moratorium is lifted, people are going to immediately start removing people from homes. And that shouldn't happen either. If people are behind on rent, they should have the opportunity to try to catch that up if they can. We're going to need a way to figure out how to deal with the rent that eventually will come due for people who have been out of work through no fault of their own. We need a societal response to that. We need a national response to that, he said. Ellison, no, they're just talking about somebody from the University of Princeton. I don't want to see that. So evictions continue in these states. Evictions continue, meanwhile, in the states such as Alabama, Oklahoma, where 1,156 evictions have been filed since March 15th, according to Open Justice Oklahoma. Why? Why? So you mean to tell me Alabama and Oklahoma out of the other states in the country would not stop evictions? That's pretty stupid. During a pandemic? The legal advocates that I've been speaking to have become very concerned that if we don't close these loopholes, the court system is going to receive an onslaught of eviction notices once the state of emergency is lifted. Yeah, you're right about that. Well, the only thing you can do is hope that they'll come up with some kind of way for people that are renting to do some type of back pay to their landlords. That might help. But yeah, they're certainly going to have to come up with something. And this is their job. This is the state and the government job to come up with a way for this to work for both landlords and the renters in this country. So we'll see what they come up with. I'll try to stay on top of that because I know a lot of people out here are renting. Everybody don't own their homes or apartments or whatever, they don't own it and they have to pay rent, or they're not in a situation where they can buy a home. But y'all, please tell me what you think. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell and I'll see you on the next video. Peace, family.